Hey, it's your buddy Peace and Harmony with you here today. We're zooming in a little bit more in depth on the fixation quality, the obsessive quality, the compulsion quality that essentially is created in the psychopathic and narcissistic relationship. That experience of being infatuated, of being out of control, of having this obsessive love, of being fixated on this person, preoccupied with this person, so that all of your energy is at once focused and aroused by the presence of this individual and how they are controlling or manipulating, oftentimes to their ends and without the empowerment of yourself. Realize that the obsession creates a very uncomfortable situation for the target. An obsession is followed by a compulsion where one, contrary to their free will, it is very much a counter experience to having a compulsion in place. And a state of obsession is when you're preoccupied with this person and it interferes, it intrudes, it has a sort of intrusiveness with your everyday life, your everyday thought patterns, and you feel this sense of intrusion, violation of boundaries and of yourself, which we call depersonalization. They will do this through a number of different tactics, from triangulation, smear campaigns, things that make you go, whoa, what's going on here? Let me drop everything. And so I can go and make sure that my relationship is safe, my drug is safe, I will still get my fix from this person. So as I've mentioned several times in the videos, is that the narcissist and psychopathic love very much is that of an addictive quality. It is one where one begins to have an incessant craving for this person, and one feels a sense of distraction, void, emptiness, and a sort of loss and a experience of fear when they're not in touch with this person. So right there, that experience should tell you that your own personal power, your own personal empowerment, your animus, the spirit, the spiritus, the breath which gives you life, is now directed to an external source outside of yourself, which is not a positive and healthy thing. The body is not meant to have this intruder. The body and mind is not meant to be in a chronic state of imbalance where you have to be hypervigilant and, in essence, force self-protection to secure this supply, as if it's food for your being, as if it's drink for your soul, as if it's vital nutrients for your blood in order to survive. That is the distortion, and that is the effect of the love bombing, and trying to return to that state of love bombing that was originated in the earlier phase of the relationship, where you were focused on 100%, you were listened to 100%. They had asked a gazillion and one questions of you to learn more about you. But furthermore, they did this so that they could find out your weaknesses, find out your thought patterns, find out your body language, so that they could in turn mimic these. And also remember that the narcissist and psychopath, particularly the psychopath, will enter in relationships strictly for really the essence of experimentation or observing or learning. And they will learn to suss out, size up body language, experiences of quote unquote the population at large, the masses, the individuals with whom they're observing, and they will find out, wow, isn't that interesting that you like to hold hands? That is interesting about you. Or that is interesting that you want to embrace my shoulders. Or that's interesting that you want to, touch me behind my neck. And they find very much interest in these bonding behaviors that are part of caregiving, because they do not have this in their emotional repertoire. They just don't have this in their emotional language with which they want to connect and keep a relationship growing, developing, and producing in the future. The psychopath individual does not have an experience of empathy or caring for others. It is pure manipulation and control. And so this obsession is followed then by a compulsion, where one has a compulsive need to try to get back the relationship, get back the drug, secure more amounts of the drug, which is the love bombing, that experience of being engulfed with all the things that you wanted to hear, the things that they were telling you, I don't want to call them white lies, but things that were meant to groom you and programming you into being addicted to them. Remember, love, when you experience love, you experience a sense of yourself, and you also experience the experience of another. You don't feel a loss of self. You still feel like you are present and in command of your senses. Your senses might be heightened, or you might feel that you're sharp, focused, and have intensive love, where you're giving and experiencing this profound passion and power, but yet you're not losing yourself or losing yourself over to a manipulator in the process. So it's a very fine difference between the two experiences, and I want you to understand that, because one results in happiness, fulfillment, and security. The other results in loss, deprivation, destruction, unhappiness, post-traumatic stress syndrome, feeling of addiction, needing to stuff your feelings, drinking, drugging, compulsive gambling, and a multitude of other compulsive behaviors to try to fill the void that has been created in you by this individual. In fact, they will strive to deepen the void and feeling of loneliness which perhaps you had entered the relationship in with. But it's the coming through and the healing that I emphasize so much here on the channel, which is meant to bypass that and instead work on personal empowerment, where you are fully living in your body and your heart space and not caught up in your mind with the obsession and compulsion and that whole profundity that they are having people stuck in. And when I say stuck, I mean not able to impasse, not able to move beyond. It's impassable. It's feeling of being down, stuck. I can't get out of the house. I can't eat. I can't have friendships. I can't go around my family. I'm experiencing toxic shame. I'm so angry at myself. I'm having angry outbursts. I'm beside myself. I can't shower. I can't get out of bed. What are some of the other things? People start behaving in ways that they never, had ever even desired. Like people who are very healthy who start smoking. People who are good people end up, radically changing, much of their behavior towards themselves. And, having this almost meltdown. And this compulsion is really, it becomes an irresistible urge. It becomes, especially contrary to your conscious wishes. So you're consciously wanting to not go there. And part of personal development is developing a higher consciousness where you have the ability to discipline yourself. In other words, I'm not going to drink the bottle of gin. I'm not going to smoke the pack of cigarettes. I'm not going to eat the fast food. I'm not going to eat the gallon of ice cream. I'm going to have moderation. That is having discipline versus compulsion. Compulsion is something which is executed or behaved in very contrary to what one wants. For example, I've had a number of clients who have been, sexually exploited by a psychopathic individual, and compulsive sex at uncomfortable times, in uncomfortable places, public places, etc. So this is beyond their wishes, but then it becomes that very violation of one's wishes, which becomes part of the new fabric that is then woven into the tapestry of really how the addiction. So one becomes then addicting to that self-annihilating illusion or fulfillment of the fantasy, which is truly self-annihilating or contrary to your wishes. So it's almost as if you are obsessing against your wishes. You are involved in a relationship which is contrary to your wishes, but you feel you have to have it. So it's the setting up of an addiction, which is the losing of control. It results oftentimes in separating you from the very things with which you love. And so the other alienating aspect is that the energy I don't want to say energy chamber, but the energy dimension, the energetic field with which especially the psychopath creates around you, makes it very difficult for you to connect with other people. So it can become a very isolating experience. So oftentimes psychopaths will target, several people who have a vulnerability to this, to being unique, to being solitary individuals, to being introverted, to being focused in on their work, and very self-directed, autonomous individuals. And so they can tap into that already ambitious drive in place, and then get in there with as much intensity, but in a compulsive manner where it really comes contrary to that person's wishes. So then they're pursuing this destructive relationship with that same intensity with which they're pursuing their other life goals and ambitions, and it becomes basically an abandoning of one in pursuit of the other, which is not what they want. So it's a very, very strange dynamic that takes place in the energetic field. And as I've mentioned before, especially in psychopathic relationships, around these individuals who possess a certain quality of high testosterone, the change of the amygdala in the gray matter of the brain, which results in lack of emotional connection, and also reduces the self-governing responses that relate to morality and conscience, that it creates this ability for them to radically and aggressively pursue that which they're after, but without empathy for others. So this high testosterone almost negates or shuts out the experience of empathy for others. So they will just go for what they want at the expense of another. So that is really one of the hallmarks of a classic psychopathic manipulation tactic. And it can become very incorrigible to work through this if you have a compulsion. Incorrigible meaning difficult, resistive to change. Can be difficult to let them go. Oftentimes, you cannot make sense of this logically because the thought patterns are so skewed. And so, skewed in one direction to them versus towards yourself and centered. When we look at a bell curve, you've got the center mean, which is where, most of your data and focus is following. And then you have at the tips, one end, and then, if you've ever seen a bell curve in statistics, basically, you find where the mass of the population is, then you've got, the higher achievers over here, and then the very low achievers over here. So it creates this, your thoughts, rather than becoming focused on yourself and, self-supportive, nurturing towards things that you want, it becomes very skewed. So the behaviors, thoughts, beliefs that used to be self-grounded and self-protective and about family and career and love become skewed to this very destructive type of nature, which becomes essentially an imploding, which means, caving in on oneself, so it cannot be sustained. And so, when you feel you are in the grips of this, I think it's very interesting to look at the root word of let's see, where's the root word. I'm interested in the origins of language, and the origins of obsession comes from the Latin obsessio, which in the early 16th century was in the sense siege, S-I-E-G-E, and from the verb obsidiary, to siege something, siege, obsidiary, which then, became transmuted into the word siege, which when we understand siege is very much like a military term. It's, when, for example, a town is sieged is when they have closing in from all sides and that town is taken over. So the obsession is very much like the military operation of siege, where this person basically has has seized you, basically has control over you. It's a very scary, very horrible feeling, and I feel for those people who are going through that right now, and realize that this is just the effect of a manipulative relationship, and it has nothing to do with reality. But you've got to get out of the grips of the siege of this individual through their talk, their bantering, their mind games, their manipulative tactics. You just have to go no contact, cold turkey. You just have to get away from them. It is the only way to get out of their influence, is to clean your vision of them totally, to clean your environment of them, to clear your mind of them, to clear everything, to not have any speck of them around whatsoever, because that will continue to trigger you and continue to reinforce this siege. And when we look at siege, I think it's very interesting. It is a military operation in which enemy forces surround a town or building, cutting off essential supplies with the aim of compelling the surrender of those inside. So that's in essence what's going on. You're basically being seized by the enemy. And again, I take this with grave seriousness, that it's nothing to play with when you're involved in such an obsessive love. It can really ruin you emotionally, financially, your time, etc., and keep you separate from really all the wonderful and the beautiful human being with which you are, and the life with which you're meant to live. That illusion, that feeling of, having beautiful love and this beautiful energy really is yours, and it's meant to be yours to be lived once you are liberated from this individual. So really, I think it's in the recovery and the amount of personal and spiritual strength that is required to be committed to the recovery and to living life without this person that creates that euphoria and that feeling of victory, and really a heightened, altered sense of consciousness, which is really becoming self-actualized, which is truly what you're looking for, and that will result when you let go of the psychopath individual for good in your life. And that is 100% across the board, where there's no impact or influence of them in your environment, in your world, in your computer whatsoever. Peace and harmony with you here today. I hope these videos do help. Please share and please subscribe for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support.